Hello, everyone, and welcome now, day 23, reading the 40 chapters of Exodus across the 40 days of Lent. Now we are in the second half of this book, and for those of you that are in a pattern routine of getting this early in the day and watching this early or listening to this early in the day, it's 9 o'clock now on Monday, and so it's just been that kind of a day. Before I get into chapter 23, I want to just highlight and briefly remark on something that somebody commented on about the priesthood that that was from our text, and then somebody asked about, and somebody made the nuance between delegation and distinction, as in the role of these priests and I suppose the elders as well. It was more of the distinction is more that they were to relieve Moses of duties than it was that they were deserving. uh, yes. So it was a practical thing to incorporate the elders. Certainly, they were men of wisdom amongst the various clans of the collective, but it wasn't. It was practical in order to give Moses support, and with the priesthood, and we'll see this developed further on in this Exodus account. The origins of the priesthood. They were chosen from a specific family. Aaron, Moses' brother, Aaron and Aaron's sons and their sons, and so on. And so it wasn't the priests. It wasn't that they were of outstanding character. They were merely privileged because of their bloodline at this point. And so, in fact, there's multiple priests who do not have high character, and we might get into some of that before we conclude Exodus. All right, so chapter number 23, the legal code is expanding about giving false uh, reports. Again, this is regarding judicial testimony in verse number 1. In verse number 2. In verse number 2, when it comes to judicial testimony, it's also the same. You've got to give a testimony of integrity rather than following the majority view. If you encounter, in verse number 4, if you encounter your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, you've got to return it to him. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you and it's fallen down under its load, you must not ignore him but help it. I mean, here, this is an indication of things Moses is dealing with. False witnesses and matters of jurisprudence. People you don't even like, you've got to help get them their donkeys back or their cargo transported. Again, remember, part of this law is going to be the antithesis of Egypt. In Egypt, you were overworked for the objectives of Pharaoh. Here amongst this Hebrew community, we're going to work together, even when we do not like each other. Verse 6, you must not turn away justice for your poor people in their lawsuits. Down to verse number 7, it's you got to separate from false charges. God says, I'm not going to justify the wicked. I mean, here in the world of Scripture, the rich always had an advantage in the courts, and I think there's something comparable to that in our time. The wealthy can afford the best lawyers and things of that nature. But here that this law is concerned with the rights of the poor concerning the courts. You must not accept a bribe because a bribe blinds people and it subverts the words of the righteous. In verse 9, you must not oppress a resident foreigner, since you were a resident foreigner or an alien in Egypt. Once again, there's one of the benefits, the advantages of reading this is there's certain laws and code from the Hebrew text that we concentrate on, and other things that we neglect, that we never talk about or discuss. And here, this isn't only, most of these we are reading in repetition about receiving the resident aliens. Once again, the refrain is, you were resident aliens as well. Again, you were mistreated in Egypt as aliens, and so how are we going to show how different God is from Pharaoh? We're going to treat our aliens nicely, and then people are going to know we're not Egypt, we're not Pharaoh, but we are God's people. And then this chapter gets into the Sabbath and feast. Well, the Sabbath is not just going to be a day, but it's going to be a years in the sequence of years. 6 years you grow on your land. The 7th year you let your land rest. And what's going to happen is there's going to be, something's going to automatically grow from the land, right? Even if you don't plant, there's still seeds in the ground. And that is going to go to the poor. 6 days you work, but on the 7th day you rest, including the resident alien, your slaves, and your livestock. Again, we're going to show that we're different than Pharaoh. Pharaoh refused to give us a 3-day vacation to worship. We're going to have a 1-day vacation every single week, and it's going to apply to everybody. God's rule and reign is different than that of the imperial influences. We're going to have rest. 6 years you're going to grow. The 7th year it's going to rest. You're going to rest your land. The animals, the land is all very theological, all very sacred, and it's going to allow the poor to be able to basically loot whatever comes from the fields. We've got some repetition from the 10 Commandments here. Do not mention the names of other gods. 3 times a year you must make a pilgrim feast. The unleavened bread for 7 days. The feast of harvests. All right. So first, the unleavened bread. You're going to remember what has happened in the Exodus. You're going to reinforce your group formation and identity. Your feast of harvest here, the first fruits of your labors, you are going to remember that as well, from the initial part of your harvest to the final part of your harvest, the feast of ingathering. This is important. We're going to remember that our land is sacred and theological. Our process of planting and harvesting is sacred and theological. Our work is going to be sacred and theological. Why? Because we are being formed out of a protest of Pharaoh's work ethic and his economic ethic. And so therefore our work ethic and our economic ethic is going to be sacred. It's going to be an indication of God's rule here on earth. Now the final part of this chapter. The angel is going to protect them, obey the angel, if you do right, I'm going to be an enemy to your enemies. Do not bow down before other gods, it says. Do not serve them or their practices. There's going to be a certain fidelity here to God. That's the way covenant works. If you serve God, he's going to bless your bread and your water. He's going to remove sickness. Verse 26, no woman will miscarry her young or be barren in your land. There is this image here of flourishing if the people are cooperative with God. There's going to be enough food, there's going to be enough health care, and things of that nature. That all of this, and both in the world of antiquity and in the world of modernity, is economic. Everything is going to be sacred. The economic policy, healthcare policy, um, the even the military policy as well, and most certainly the policy regarding food, the policy regarding resident aliens, and all of that. And so once again, the final words of this chapter is a reinforcement, a reiteration that if the people are in their or remain committed to the covenant, God's going to remain committed to the covenant, protect them. But if you make covenants with other gods, it's going to be problematic. All right, 11 minutes in. I'll pause it here. I'll catch you again tomorrow, everyone. Thank you.